Good morning, everybody. So what we'd like to do today is basically go through and show you the new web-based fan selection software that we now have. This will be replacing the old desktop program that's currently in use. Some of you who use that program may have noticed, for example, that now no longer prices. So this new version of software will be the only software that we'll then have that will both select and price our products. So it's important that we go through and show you today what the program is, how it works, so you can start to use it and transition away from the old desktop program. So the way I'm going to do this today is I'm basically going to go through and I'm going to show you how the program works. I'm going to focus on the key areas and features that I think you need to know. So basically, I'll be going through and making a series of selections. You can do this as well at the same time if you want, but it's not a course as such. It's basically a presentation of me showing you how the software works. As Elliot said, what we can do is, by all means, use the chat facility throughout to ask questions. We'll come back to these at the end. And in terms of questions at the end, we'll open up the microphone. So if you want to speak, we can do so. But during the presentation, if you could please be on mute, that would be appreciated. So really using the program, first thing to understand, where is the program? So as I said, the new version is web-based. And this is located under a URL called fanselector.flatgroup.com. There's no need for www or anything like that. It's just basically fanselector.flatgroup.com. There are also other versions. There are some links to this also through the Woods Air Movement website. What I'm going to show you today, though, is the group version, the flat group version. The operation of it is the same between the Woods Air Movement version and this. It's just a different color. So basically, I'm going to show you the corporate group one, but they both operate the same way. So the couple of things to understand before we actually start to use the software. Those of you who use the old software, the desktop program, the user accounts that currently exist in that software will not be copied across to the new version. You'll need to sign up for the first time. So when you come to use this for the very first time, you will have to create an account, and I'll show that at the beginning. And I also recommend as well, because this is not installed on your computer, that you do create bookmarks to this so you can get back to it quickly and easily. And that's where we'll actually start, is to go through the process of creating these links so you can quickly load the URL and get the web-based version up quickly. So you'll be pleased to hear that's all I've got on PowerPoint. So from now on in, it's going to be using the software, and I'll basically be demonstrating how it operates and how to use it. So let's close PowerPoint down. So a couple of things, first of all, bookmarks. Now, this is a web-based program. It works in all browsers. I'm going to be using Chrome today, but again, if you prefer Edge or Firefox or something else, it doesn't matter. You can use what you like. So I'm going to load up Chrome. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to the website. I've already been there once before, so it's in my favorites list. And two ways to bookmark. So first of all, you can create bookmarks in the browser. Now, again, different browsers do this in different ways. If I show you in Chrome, you can do the same sort of thing in Edge or Firefox. So the way I do it in Chrome basically is to use the menu on the right-hand side, the ... menu. And in here, you have the ability to create bookmarks. In the bookmarks, you can bookmark a tab, give it a name, and then save it. But the important thing here is if you're using Chrome, for example, the bookmark bar by default is actually off, which is weird, but it is. So I'd strongly recommend you turn that on. So like mine, you can see here, I've got these different bookmarks and links to these different websites. One of these, if you create it, you can label it as Fan Selector or Flat Group Fan Selector, and then very quickly go back to it just by simply pressing that, and it will take you straight to the URL. But I say by default, for some reason, this is off. The show bookmark bar in Chrome is off by default. So that's one method. The other method I'd also recommend is if you, on your desktop, and this is probably the best way of doing it, if you right click and go new and go shortcut, what you can do is create a shortcut link to the website. So this is the fanselector.flatgroup.com website. I can go next, I can give it a name, and Selector, press finish, and then basically I get a desktop icon. Now my icon here is Edge because my computer's default browser is Edge. I'm using Chrome for the demo, but that's why the icon is like that, because that's Edge as my default browser. The benefit here, though, when I double click it, it will load up Edge automatically and the website. But these links can be placed either on the system tray, or if you like using the startup tiles on the startup tiles. So it's a quicker way of getting both to the program web page and also the website in one go, rather than loading up a browser and then pressing a favorites link or bookmark link. So that's the two methods that I would recommend you use. This is the one that I think is best, is to use the desktop shortcut icon. So I'm going to go back to Chrome. This is the landing page and the landing experience. So this is the fanselector.flatgroup.com homepage. So just have a quick look at what we've got, just to understand the layout and structure of the website. At the top of the screen is the main menu, and this basically stays visible all the time. Doesn't matter where you are in the program, this is always seen. And in here, you've got links to make selections and find product, and also go back to this home page, which is where we are at the moment. Now, the website does work without being logged in, as well as being logged in. The big difference is if you're not logged in, you won't see prices and you can't save your selections. In other words, you can't use project files. And there's a few other user account settings that you won't have access to, but it will work. So you can still choose product. You just can't see those prices and you can't save what you've done. I'm going to start the demo not logged in, then I'll come back and log in and you'll see the differences. So this gold bar underneath on the home page is currently blank, but this will contain links and information to the various products that we are selecting and working with, and it changes as we're using the program. So this gold bar is very important because this is your main way of navigating between the different product properties and the product features. And again, you'll see that as we use it, the content changes depending on what we're doing. So on the left-hand side, we have our corporate navigation bar where we can link to other selection tools. And importantly, later on, we can use the sign-in service to log into the program. As I said, I'm going to start at the moment using this not logged in. The middle of the screen is the main landing page experience of the program. So left-hand side, we just basically have some adverts. The main area, though, is in the middle here, where we've grouped products in two different categories. We've got them grouped by application and function, and we have them grouped by product family. Now, this probably isn't the best way to actually go and find products and select products, and you'll see why in a minute when we come to use it. This is more for a casual, inexperienced user or somebody who wants to pick maybe one or two fans and that's it. But they're basically groups of products in these different families and categories. And on the right-hand side, you'll see information relating to some updates relating to the program itself. So we're going to use this area here, for example, just to show you what's changed, what's been added that's new. For example, this option down the bottom here is new, where we can find an equivalent product from a competitor, which I think this is quite unique to our program at the moment. So if I just press that, you see as a search button comes up. If I type in part of a competitor product code, AX for example, you can see here we've found fans from New Air, System Air, and Devenco, all of which have AX somewhere in the product code here. And what this is basically doing, this allows us to basically find our equivalent product of their product. So you can see here we've got different product types here, and this orange button on the right-hand side will allow us to make a selection of that product based on that competitor code. This is something we're going to extend over time. It's quite high level at the moment, but I'm hoping you can see it's something that's unique and quite beneficial to what we've got here, which I don't think any other program's got this at the moment. So this is what we're going to have on the right-hand side, is promotional information for new features and functions that we've added to the program. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a very simple basic selection. And I'm going to do this by not using these options here. I'm going to use the options at the top, the two menus at the top here, where we have select products, which is an aerodynamic selection, where you have a volume and a pressure. And later on, we look at direct mode or configure mode, where you're looking at configuring a product based on its physical attributes and size and build characteristics. So I'm going to start where most people start, which is making an aerodynamic selection. And the reason I'm using the top menu is if I just press this, you can see we've still got the same two categories that's on the home page. We've got applications and functions here. We've got product lines. But what you can see here, though, is all the products. that are in this particular category. So this is the actual fans category. You can see here we have 11 or 12 products that are visible. On the home page, you have the category, actual fans, but you can't see what's in it. So I would personally recommend that if you're using the software regularly, that you use the top menus to navigate and choose product. So if we look at the actual fans section, you can see here we've got a blue button here that says select all. We've also got one product that's highlighted, which is the default here, which is J&V. And we've got this product card that's appeared on the right hand side. Again, if I choose a different product, you'll see a different card. And then here you've got orange buttons down the bottom that says select and configure. So the difference here is the blue button, select all, is working in a very similar way to how the old desktop program works, where basically you're going to make a selection across all these products at the same time. You can find all these products in the results. The orange buttons here are going to select or configure being direct mode, just this product type. So in this example here, I only want to select a J&V. So I'm going to use the orange button to make sure that I'm not going to look at all the other products at the same time. I'm just going to make a very basic, simple J&V selection. So I'm going to use the orange button here, and we'll go into the selection screen. We'll come back later on and look at some of the other categories because they do differ in terms of the experience. But let's first of all look at an actual fan, which is our core product line. So because I've gone in using the orange buttons, it's confirmed here that I'm looking just at J&Vs above this duty panel. So the screen has changed a bit now. So we've lost the home page and now we've gone into our main selection interface. The gold bar you can see now has inherited some extra options. So we've got results grid, which is currently empty because obviously we haven't made any selections yet. We've got reset, which resets all the values that we've entered. Print, which is currently grayed out because we haven't made any selections yet to print something. So you have to have at least one fan to print before that becomes available. And add to project, which currently is blank and wouldn't work at the moment if I pressed it because I'm not logged in, and it will ask me to sign up. So these options here are relative to the fans that we're looking at having made a selection. So let's make a simple selection and get something visible so we can actually see what we've got. Now we will look at all these options later on. So all I'm going to do at the moment is do a very simple basic. Let's go at 300 pascals. Again, like the old program, these units can be changed. So if you're working in different units or different measures, you can do this. It auto calculates to show you the value depending on that unit you've entered. But I'm going to make here a very simple selection, volume pressure. I'm leaving everything as a default. I'm going to press the orange button and make a selection. And then basically we get to the results grid then, some fans. So in this example here, you can just about see at the bottom, I've got 21 fans that I found. So in this grid here, I've located 21. And it works in a similar way to the existing desktop program. What you have here is a series of columns of information. And for each item in this set of results, you see some are highlighted in yellow. So anything in yellow represents the best value. So you can see here, for example, this one down here, 89. This is the quietest fan, quietest being the best. This one here, for example, is the smallest motor. And if I look on the right-hand side, lightest fan, slowest running, smallest peak power, etc. So all the yellow values are the best in that particular category. Now, if you look at the grid headings across the top here, and again, I'll show you later on, by the way, how you can configure this grid. This is the default view at the moment. You can see each of these can be sorted. Now, this arrow here against model indicates it's the model field, and the underlined bar also shows it, is the one that's currently being filtered upon. So it's currently showing the smallest fan first. If I press that again, it'll invert the sort order and show you the biggest fan first. And all these columns work the same way. So I could show you the most efficient fan. I could show you different sound figures. So basically any of these columns will allow you to adjust the order of which the results are presented. Now I'm going to go back to the default, which is showing you the smallest fan first. I'm hoping you can see there it's quite simple to use in terms of moving the information around in terms of order of various different columns. Now, visibility wise, there's a few things in here again which differ to the old program, the old desktop program. The first thing is you've probably seen is we now show on every selection by default a small thumbnail of the fan chart. So what you can do here is look at these fans very quickly, and you can see, for example, this one here is operating very high on the characteristic, not as good as something like this fan, which is operating right near the middle. So you don't have to press on the fan to see this now. You can actually see it in the grid. If you press these, you can make them bigger, just if you want a bit more clarity to see where you're operating. But it's a nicer way to actually look at what you've got and make an assessment of what's a good or bad selection. Now, this one here doesn't look bad actually, so I'm going to leave this one. So now I've highlighted it, you see it's ticked, got a grey bar showing you the active row. We've now got options appearing at the top, which weren't there before. So if you don't pick anything at all, there's nothing. If I pick something, you see at the top here, it confirms the model code, this model code here. And these are the properties for this particular fan that I'm looking at. So we just go through one by one and show you what's in there, and you can see what we've got. So summary page is equivalent to the old technical info on the old desktop program. So here you have all the calculated data. This is all the performance data. Underneath you have the dimensions on the same page. To the right hand side you have some mechanical information, the performance chart, acoustic, and if I'd been logged in, you'd have seen in here pricing. So this is the fan, and it would have shown pricing if I'm logged in, which again, you'll see that in a minute when I changed my user account to someone who's logged in. And in here, you'd also show the accessories if we had picked any, which again, we'll look at in a minute. So this one page shows you the selection data, performance data, and also some dimensional data, all on one page. The chart, again, a bit like the old program, shows you a bigger performance chart where you can see more clearly where you're operating in terms of the required duty point and the actual duty point, and also the pitch angle ranges that can be used for the particular motor that we have. So these grey lines, for example, here show you the max and minimum angles that this motor can be used for this particular fan. Underneath, we have some other charts. They're minimized by default, but we have the power chart. We've also added in this version the efficiency chart. So you can see the efficiency shape in relation to the performance, depending on where you are on the pitch angle line. So these are minimized by default, but they're there. And I won't go through all these, but I'll make you aware of this. On the left-hand side, you can see here we have something called chart options with a right-hand arrow. This is basically an area that pops out where you can then change the way the chart is presented. These will also be settings that will later be in your user account. So for example, if you always wanted to show contours, which I'll just turn on, I can choose an option, I can apply this option, and then the chart will change. I'll just minimize that again. So now you can see we've got the contours. So we can see now where we're operating in terms of this is the best spot. So it's not a bad selection really. It's quite close to a good operating point. You can play around with this. They're all ways to tailor how you can show or hide different pieces of information. When you've done this though, anything that uses a chart, whether it be a printout, or if I go back to the summary page, for example, you'll see that chart will change to that particular style. So if I take away pitch angles, or as I've done here, show the contours, that will be seen wherever that chart is shown and displayed or printed. That's charts. And then in dimensions, we have here the main dimensions of the product. And if I picked any accessories, which again we'll see in a minute, underneath you'll see the dimensions for the accessories, which is something we don't currently do in the old software. And also in here, you'll see on the right hand side, there's a link to some supporting CAD and design files. So this is basically a Revit BIM file you can download. So the dimensions tab allows you to get design data and also design files to support you in anything you're doing in terms of architectural work or building designs. Accessories, I didn't pick any when I first made the selection, but I can add some on afterwards if I wanted to. We'll come back to this in a minute, but the way we choose accessories in this program is more visual in terms of how we actually define them in relation to where they are in relation to the fan, whether they're on the inlet or outlet. We'll come back to this in a minute and you'll see why. But in here, if you wanted to, you can retrospectively add an accessory to this fan. It works the same way as the old program. You have loss factors, and you can specify how many of these particular accessories you'd want on this particular item. But again, we'll come back to this screen in a minute. Acoustics, quite simple. Basically, it's the noise and breakout figures for the fan. If I picked a silencer, which again we'll look at in a minute, you'll see the insertion loss for the silencer. And later on, we'll also work out some resulting sound figures based on where the silencer is in relation to the fan. And lastly, the documents is a list to the supporting catalogs that we have for this particular product. So these documents at the top here, these are PDF files from our corporate website. And at the bottom, we also have a link to the same documents that you saw under this Dimensions tab. So documents is a list of both catalog material and also design files. And documents is basically listing everything that we have on our portfolio for supporting information on this particular product. So if I didn't want this fan, for some reason, this wasn't what I wanted. If I want to go back and look at some other fans that we had, how do I do that? Well, you can see here at the top, we had this results grid. And when I first pressed it, it was blank because I hadn't made a selection. I haven't changed anything at the moment. So if I go back to my results grid, it will remember what I had before. So if I didn't like that fan for whatever reason, and maybe I preferred this fan here. If I highlight more than one fan, you can see I've got two highlighted now. You can see another option's appeared. Compare. If I press compare, what that will do is it will show both fans side by side, and it shows you some of the key values so you can make a better assessment of which one might be better or worse for your particular need. So in this example here, you can see you've got one fan that's slightly quieter than the other, one fan that's got slightly less power. So it depends what you're doing in terms of what's best or what's better for you. Again, if I'd logged in, you would have seen price. You can also judge the value between the two fans. But it's just a nice visual way of showing you a side-by-side comparison of a multiple number of fans, so you can see what looks best for what you're doing. Just close that. Now, when you highlight more than one, these options are grayed out because it doesn't know which one to show. So only with a single active fan will these be available for you to use to see the content. Okay, so I'm now going to stop. I'm now going to log in, and I'm going to do the same thing, and you'll see the difference. So I'm now going to sign in. Now, as I said at the beginning, you'd have to do this for the first time when you've used this, is you'd have to sign up. So the sign up now, you can see there's a link on the registration page here. This is just a one-off process where if you press this, you'll be asked to enter an email address. It sends you a verification code to make sure the email address is valid. You put that code in, and then you fill in the rest of the details, your name, and choose your password that you want to use. And thereafter, you have an account. It's as simple as that. Now, I already have an account, so I can log straight in. So I'll just cancel that. If I go back into here and log in, my account's already created. So first time in the day, I'll log in. Then you'll see the difference in terms of what you see on the screen. So not a lot's changed, but there's a few things that have appeared. So first of all, you can see now on the left-hand side in this gold bar, I now have details relating to the country that I'm in. My account currently is set to Taiwan. And also the price list that my user is going to have to show the values against. So I'm currently looking at UK list price, which is our distribution catalog prices. And you can also see on the left-hand side, something called My Project has appeared, which wasn't there before. Now it's currently empty because we haven't created anything, but this on the left-hand side is where all your saved selections will go. This is now your project. So this is the main two differences, that when you log in, you see this pricing information and details, and also you see this project structure and this project tree, so you can save what you've done. So if I go back and I'll remake the selection we just did, so JMV, select. And I think from memory I did 3 at 300, 3 at 300. Now, I'm now going to label this fan before I make a selection. I'm going to call this My Fan 1. And I'm going to have 4 of these because I know that that's what the specification needs. So I'm going to reselect this fan. Now, I'm seeing a different number of fans here now than I saw before. And that's because I wasn't logged in before. So because I'm in the UK, I was only seeing UK compliant products. I'm actually now in Taiwan now I'm logged in. The program knows I'm a different country. So this is why I'm now seeing more results, because in Taiwan, I can see fans, you can see these red X's that are not compliant for Europe, where when I was in the UK, all these red X's were removed because they're not compliant. So that's why I'm seeing a different number, because this territory here, this country, defines how the program behaves in terms of what you can and can't see. If I were to change my country to a different one, then I will see different products based on whether I'm in, for example, Europe or not, or whether I'm somewhere else in the world. So that's why I'm seeing a different number, because I'm now in Taiwan. That's one difference. I can also see now 2 columns relating to price, which also weren't there before, because as again, a non-logged in user can't see prices. So all people now who sign up will now see pricing as a default, and your pricing will be based on the price list that your user has been set to. Now, some people will have the ability to change price list, and this is an account privilege. So certain agents that we have and certain internal users that we have sell to more than one country and can sell between more than one price list. So most of you will just basically have the price list shown as text. You can see mine here is a drop down. I can actually choose whichever price list I want. That's an account privilege. Now, not all of you will have that, but you'll at least be able to see the country you're operating in and the price list that your values will be based against in this top left-hand side. Otherwise, there's no difference. Visually, it looks the same. It's performing the same function. So what I'm going to do now, before I go into the project area, I'm just going to minimize that just to give me a bit more space. I'm going to quickly go through these options in the middle here, so we can look at some other properties that we can use to define the selection. And then what we'll do is we'll choose a product, add it to a project, and then you'll see how the project works. So let's go through these one at a time. So I did a basic selection 3 at 300 using all the default values. So let's have a first of all look at options. So options is a bit of a miscellaneous area of different settings grouped together, because these don't really fit in any one particular category. So options is an area you go to find some sort of more of the obtuse and unusual options, like for example, sound distance, where you can specify how far away you are from the fan for the sound distance to be calculated. Are you offering products that are under or overperforming, etc.? So all these are basically in the options section. Now, the interface has been designed for use with touch. So we're very conscious that the old program, the desktop program, it's now 17 years old. We want to make sure that the new program here is also going to have a long life. So we have to recognize that nowadays, touch is a very common way of interacting with software. And this will work on a tablet or a phone. Phone's a bit challenging because it's a bit small screen, but it will work on a phone. So phones and tablets are all touch. Laptop screens now are becoming also touch. So we wanted to make sure that the interface experience was suitable not only just for a mouse and keyboard, but was also suitable for touch. So these options here, for example, look at series idling. This toggle is very similar to what you'd see in an Android or Apple device when it comes to turning on or off settings. So we basically use the same concept. So these are basically on or off. You can also see we've used more visualization. So if I turn on series idling, this graphic has now become prominent and bold. I can also press the graphic. It does the same thing. So it makes it more accessible to use with your finger. And again, same with these options: motor power, reversibility, and installation options. You can see here, these are either vertical or horizontal. And it's just a visual way of showing you that it's either this or that. So it's just a very simple, clear way of showing you which ones are active. Drop-down menus still work the same way. So when you see these, you have the ability to press it and choose something. Not quite as nice to use with touch, but they do work. But all other areas, we've tried to use this more graphical way of allowing you to choose the options. So say options is a group of miscellaneous features. Some of these you will find will repeat elsewhere. Doesn't matter where you use it, they're linked. But if we go through one at a time now, you'll see what else we've got. So electrical and motor is anything relating to the actual motor that's inside the product. Now I'm looking at a J&V here, so these have limited motor options. I can't see, for example, things like foot mounted or flange mounted, because that's not suitable for this product. So when you're looking at something like this, the program removes options which are not compatible with the particular product you're looking at. If I looked at a JM, for example, you'll find more options appearing because they can be used with foot and flange mountings. Same with motor grades and any other drive types. Some of our products, for example, can have EC motors. You'll sometimes see an EC option appear because that's an option that that product can be used with. Look at speed control. Now, by default, again, like the old program, we don't offer a speed controller as part of the selection. You have to choose it. So let's just have a look at a quick inverter while we're doing this. So if we stick an inverter on here, the screen is very much the same again as the old program. You have two ways of choosing a speed controller, either a series of volumes and pressures on varying different duty points, or volumes and pressures that operate on a fixed constant. In other words, you slow the fan down or speed the fan up using a fixed system characteristic. So if I look at this one, and I will actually add an inverter here and show you what happens. So we've got one duty, which is our 3 at 300. You can see here it's repeated. Let's add another one in here. Let's go something like 275. I'm going to label these A and B just so we know what they are. So in terms of A and B, what we then have, if I do a reselection, then we have the ability to show the accessories in relating to the fan that I've chosen. So you can see here now the grid has changed because we've now got this little plus sign appearing. And this plus sign basically is where we have now a list of all the accessories that are associated to this particular fan. So I just press that, you can see here, this is now our inverter. You can see the part number. You can also see the value for this particular accessory. In this case, it's 774. And then we look at this later on. If I add more accessories, they'll also appear in this list. And then you'll see basically these against the part number and the value. So, and you can see also the chart's changed. You see now we're showing 2 duty points because these are the 2 values that I entered. So let's have a look at a random fan. Let's have a look at this fan here. So you can see now we've got our options appearing at the top. If I go back into the summary page, much the same, but you see the chart has altered. You can see here now we've got the 2 different performances. And you also see we've got these tabs at the top, A and B. They're the labels that I chose to enter. I could have put any text in there, but I chose A and B. And so A, we're showing the performance at this speed. At B, we're showing all the performance at this slower speed. And if I showed you the 2 side by side by using the all duties, you can see here the 2 differences in terms of the speeds and the different performances and power figures and sound figures for this particular fan operating at these 2 different performances based on those volumes and pressures that I entered. It's a similar way to how the old program works. It's just a slightly better way of showing it. And these all can be outputted. So you've got more chance here to showing a customer the different performances at different speeds by choosing the A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever labeling you want to put on it, performances. We can have a maximum of 5, basically, in terms of different volumes and pressures. So I'm going to go back to the results grid. And I'm going to continue now with my options. So I'm not going to keep that fan. I'm going to add some more options. Let's look at environment and temperature. So this is where we have now our details of high temperature. So if we wanted a high temperature fan, we can choose the different temperature categories. Emergency only. If I'd picked, for example, a JM, I'd also see in here things like ATEX. JMV isn't suitable for that, so the option's been removed. Underneath here, we have the option relating to air conditions. If you want to change the air density, if you know the fan's operating at altitude or at a different ambient temperature than the normal. You can see here, by the way, that these temperatures were also in the options panel. It doesn't matter which one you pick, as I said, they're linked. So some of these do replicate through. It's better probably to use that here. It's a bit of an easier interface to use, but they are linked. Installation. This is how the fan is connected to the ductwork. So the default is ducted. I could choose inlet or open outlet. There's casing type, and the form of running for this particular product is only long and B. Again, if I picked a JMV, you'd have seen here short cased, and also you'd have seen form A as an option as well. If you look at accessories, now this I will change because we only looked at this briefly against the fan. So these are the accessories that are going to be used when I actually make a selection. So let's cheat first of all. Let's go and look at this recommended option. I'm going to put on a standard set of accessories that we'd normally have with this particular fan. So you can see visually at the bottom here, we've now got a showing of the accessories on the inlet and outlet. So you can see here flanges and flexes. feet and AVs. And you can see in the grid here, some of these have now been ticked, and also with the quantity because they've been picked for me. Now I can add anything I like in here. So for example, I wanted to add in a damper. I want it on the inlet. You can see here it's showing you that particular accessory and also what side of the fan it's going to be located. Now at the moment, this is purely a visualization. It doesn't actually do anything. But what we will be doing, there'll be another column appearing here shortly that says fitted in this area here. And this will allow you to define whether this accessory is attached to the fan. Now that's important for two reasons. One, it can change the performance of the fan. And two, we will later use it to calculate a more precise and accurate anti-vibration mounting. So we can actually use the weight of the accessories and the fan, and also the side of the fan of which it's located, to use a more precise calculation to choose the right anti-vibration mountings. So for the minute, it's just visual, but that's the intention, is to try and make it more accurate when it comes to doing a technical selection. Again, as I said, the K factors, they can be changed if you want to add something. These are factors that will be used to allow for the loss of this particular accessory. Now I've chose nothing in here that has a K factor, but if I chose that damper again, for example, you can see that's going to have a 0.5 K factor for the resistance of the air passing over that item. You can also see at the top here, we've got two other tabs that have appeared. We've got silencers and also services and documents. So if I go to silencers, and for this particular product, we offer two types of silencers that are capable to be used with this. We've got splitter silencers and we have tubular silencers. If I have a look at the round ones and have a look at choose, this is another example of how the interface works dynamically and graphically. So by default, there are no silencers. So if I wanted a 1D for silencer, for example, and I wanted it B type, then you can see visually that it's going to place that on the left-hand side of the fan. Now, again, this is purely a visualization at the moment, but we will be changing this so we will stop things like this from happening when you attach it to the fan, because that's something you can't do. So the program's going to have some rules built into it to allow certain combinations to be restricted. And that's why we're looking at this sort of style of interface, to allow you to define what you can have where. And importantly, the program will stop you doing things that are not desired. So once we activate this facility, you'll find here, for example, if I chose this C type, I wouldn't have the ability to fit it. If I chose a B type, then it would be available to be fitted, because that's a permitted installation characteristic. So again, at the moment it's purely visual, but that's why it's like this. We will later be using this to calculate not only the resultant noise factor losses, but also the effect of the item on the fan, in this case a silencer, to show the fact that it can be fitted in certain orientations on inlet or outlet in relation to where the impeller is. And lastly, documents and services. This is just basically a series of either document sets we offer and or services. Most of these don't price because they are project specific, and they tend to be a by project cost. But if you want them in the list of options against your fan, you can pick them. So when you're looking at the summary page, you can see both physical accessories and also some of these other services and documentation sets. I'll leave them off for the minute. So we'll leave these on. I'm going to reselect that now, just so you see what happens. So visually, we've still got our inverter in here, so we've still got these two different performances. But if I press the plus symbol now, you'll see more of the accessories appearing with the prices and also the quantities. So now we've got a fan with some extra parts to it. There's our last two things to look at down the left-hand side here, products and filters. So products is where we have all of the products that we can choose to make a selection against. Now I went in just at JMV, so you can see here it's just the JMV that it ticked. If I wanted to do JM at the same time, I can just tick it. I can then go through and choose two different fans when I make a selection. Now this is the big difference to understand. If I go in with this blue button here, select all of these will be ticked. So if you're making a selection against a product that you know you want an axial fan, and maybe it's a small axial fan, you don't want all these ticked at the same time. So it's easier to go in with one product and then add the fans you want to consider than it is to go in with all the products and then untick the fans you don't want. Again, you will learn through usage that's a more efficient way of doing it. So that's the way that I'd recommend it. If you don't know what you want, use the blue button. If you know roughly what you want, use the orange buttons to look at a specific product, and then use the products tab to add in any other products that you know are similar to the one you're looking for. It's just a quicker way of working. And then lastly, at the bottom, filters and constraints is a way for you to limit the number of results that came back. You saw in that example earlier on, I had 40 plus fans come back. If I wanted to restrict things by size, I could put some limits in terms of certain efficiencies, certain maximum minimum powers, certain running speeds, etc. They will all filter out the fans that exceed what I enter and make the list of results more compact and more manageable. So it's quite handy if you know that you've got some constraints to add them, because as you've probably seen in the old program, you can sometimes get back quite a few fans, several hundred in some cases. So we've gone through there. We've looked at the options. I've reselected. You can see here we've got some extra accessories that have appeared for some of these fans. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to choose one of these fans and I'm going to add it to a project because I want to save it. And I'm going to choose randomly. I'm going to choose this one here. So I can add to project, but I know if I just expand my project, it's currently empty. There isn't a project there for me to add to at the moment. So if I press add here, it's going to ask me to create a project. If I could also do it here, create a project. I could ultimately also load a project. You can see here now I'm logged in. I've got show my projects, which we'll look at in a minute. This is where all my projects are saved. So for this example, I'm just going to create a brand new one. I'm going to do that by using this left-hand link. I'm going to create a project. I need to give it a name. Let's call it, as this is the 12th one we've done. So I'm calling my project demo 12. I can give it some reference numbers and other labeling. For this demo, I'm just going to basically put the project name and a quote reference number in here. I'm going to create the project, and you can see now it's changed. We now have some symbols appearing. So we can save the project, print it, open, and the briefcase is a way to modify and change the details that you entered when you created it. But you can see the project is currently empty, but it's called Demo 12. See here, and this works basically like a tree. So the more things I add to the project, I'm going to build up a series of fans in the format of a tree. So this is the fan that I want to add. So I'm now going to press the Add to Project button, and you can see this fan has now been added, and it's automatically brought across this label that I entered, this reference, my fan 1, and also the quantity. Now this is a big difference to how this program works to how the old desktop program works. The desktop program, you have to add to a project, then you have to go back to the project, then you have to add in this labeling afterwards. In here, you can do it all up front, and it makes it more efficient. So I can label any of these fans differently with a quantity. And when I make a selection, all this data you can see here automatically comes through as part of the process of adding it to a project. You can also see in the project, we've got this plus symbol. That again just reaffirms the accessories that we had for this particular fan. So this is just, it's very similar to how File Explorer works in Windows. It's basically a hierarchical view of the fans, and underneath the fans, and you can see the different accessories that have been chosen for that particular combination. Let's just go and pick something else at random, just so we can see what else goes in. Let's go and pick another random fan. Let's go 8, 300. I'm going to turn off my speed control now. I'm just going to do a basic selection. Reselect. Stop that. I'm just going to choose another random fan and I'm going to add it. So I'm going to add this fan in here, add to project. But you see, I didn't change the label. I left it as my fan 1. So now I've got 2 my fan 1s in my project. But it doesn't matter. I can always go in and change it. So if I right click a fan, I can have different options I can do with this fan. I can delete it. I can rename it, change the quantity. I can move its position. So if I'd made a mistake, which I had done here, I can right click that. I can rename it. I can say it's actually my fan 2, and there's actually only 2 of them, not 4. Update it. So now you can see it's changed. So now we've got my fan 1 and my fan 2. And I'm hoping you can see it's quite fairly straightforward of how it works. It's basically building up a list of items in the tree. Any item that you hover over with the mouse or with your finger and right click, and on the touch panel, it's when you hold the finger down, you see these options. So in here, you can see different things you can do. Now, while we're in here, I'm just going to draw your attention to something that you can do, and that's you can actually import old FWP files. So this project here that I've started to create, this demo 12, is not a file, it's data, and the data is stored in the cloud on the web. So the old program used to generate files called FWP files, which are the project files. If you have any of these, you can very simply create a project like I've done here. You can right click inside the project and you can import that FWP file into this project. So it saves you having to reselect the fans that you'd previously worked with. This allows you to do two things. It allows you to print the selections in this new format. It also allows you to reprice those fans based on today's pricing. What you can't do though, if you import, is modify or adjust the selection. It's a snapshot in time from the old program. So if you want to do something new in relation to a new selection or modify something, you will need to reselect it inside this new fan selector and not use the import. The import only works for pricing and printing, but it's a quick way of importing stuff through to save you having to reselect everything if maybe you only want to change one or two. You can delete one or two and add one or two rather than reselecting 50 or 60 if it's a bigger project. And it works very simply. You just basically find the FWP file, choose the one you want. There's a slight processing delay when it converts the data, and then basically all the fans that are imported will appear in here as a series of line items. Okay, now I've done this, I'm going to save this project. So this is now committing the project to the server in the cloud. And it will also now appear in Show My Projects. This is where all my projects are currently saved. But this project also has some other properties that we can look at. So the first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to just put the project in a more traditional view that you'll be familiar with if you use the old software. And I've just used at the moment this top option here to minimize and collapse the project tree. You can see at the bottom there's another option that's an expand. So if I press expand, this puts the project in a more typical view where you can see all the columns. So this is now all the data of the fans that we've selected. And on the right hand side here, you'll see some commercial data and here's the pricing. But what you can do in here, you can see this little hamburger menu. There are other options that you can work with this information within this particular view of the project. So please look at what you have in here. You've got the standard options like these options here where you can print and open and save, but you can also do things like export. So what I can do now is I could export my project to Excel if I want to work with a schedule or some sort of tabular data for the fans that I've chosen. It's very simple. You go export, you choose the columns you want by basically removing the ones that you don't want into this top panel here. And by moving them by drag and drop, you can change the sequence. And then when you're happy with what you've done, if you export this to a CSV file, you basically get an Excel file come back. And in the Excel file are the columns that you've chosen to export, which means you can use this to very quickly produce technical schedules or other summaries outside of this particular program. Works particularly nicely if you have a lot of fans. So you're not constrained to just using the web interface. You can export the data either to text files, which is tab delimited, or CSV, which is an Excel format. And if you then save your defaults, next time you come to do this, these columns will be in this particular order. So it's a way that you can tailor the output if you have a particular format or style of output you want to use on a regular basis. So export's quite nice to get you the data out of the program for use in things like Excel. I'm going to cancel that because I don't need to change anything that I've done. There's a few other things in here to make you aware of. So first thing is sharing. So by default, actually, let's do this in a different way. Let's go and look at the saved projects. I'm going to go in, minimize this. I'm going to go into look at the projects at the top here. So these are all the projects that I've currently saved. So this is our demo 12, which is the one we've just done. The default sort order you can see here is modified. It's underlined. So this one here is the one that's currently showing you the newest projects first. So in here, you see as a default your own projects. And the reason I can see that here, you see up top here, right hand side, my projects. These are projects that I have created myself. But I can also see my team's projects and also projects that have been shared with me. So let's look at sharing first. What do I mean by sharing? So because the project is mine and only visible to me by default, nobody else can see it. So if you wanted to share that with, say, somebody in Colchester, because you want them to do something for you or want some assistance, they can't see it. So the only way that you can get them visibility of the file is to basically choose the file, so choose the project you want to share with them. And on the right hand side, you can see we've got this hamburger menu. And in here, you can share the project. And this allows you then to share the project with somebody. Again, you have to know who you want to share it with. You could share it with some of our global mail addresses, which I think is how some of the teams work with our back office here in Colchester. Or you can share it with an individual. It could be another person within your organization, maybe. And you've got two ways to share this. You can basically give them a little message. Here is the project. And then you can choose to send an email notification where the system will automatically send them an email with a link to the project saying, here's the project, and the comment I've added here will be added inside that email. They can then press on that link and then they can open that project because you have shared it with that person particularly. Or if I didn't choose to send an email, you'll get a URL, a link you can cut and paste into any other document you want, and you can send that separately outside of the system. So the default is off, so you get a link. If you tick this box, the system will automatically send an email, and it will send it to the email that you defined in this shared address here. Now, I'm not going to share this because this is rubbish what I've got in here, but you can see here that I have had some things that are shared with me, and I've also shared things with other people. So if I go and look at which projects have been shared to me view, I've only got one. So this single project here, pricing examples, has been shared with me from this other person. This is a way that you now have visibility of which projects you're working with in a more collaborative environment. So we don't have the concept of these FWP files anymore, which I mentioned before. So we don't copy these around by email and other means that we've been used to. You now share projects to give access to others who you wish to work on the same project that you're working on yourself. And it's a collaborative experience because you can now both work on the same projects at the same time. So in this example here, both me and this person called Dan Fit could both work on this project called FS Pricing Examples. Teams is something we can set up for you, but you'll need to tell us if you want teams. So by default, you don't get teams. You only see your own projects. But if I go into my team, show you what happens. Basically, I see all the projects that have been saved and selected from the group of people that are in my particular team. Now, I've got quite a large team here, so this is going to take a little while to load all the data. If it takes too long, I'll stop, because this is a long list of projects that we have in this at the moment. Here we go. So these are all the projects that have been saved by my team, and there's quite a lot in here. You can see the size of the scroll bar. So any of these I can use as if they were my own, because as a team, you're all working and have access to the same projects. So if you're a larger organization or have different sales offices or different team members across different areas of the world or the country, if you wanted to, can create a team for those people if you speak to us, and then any people in that team can then share the same projects. So it saves you having to keep sharing things individually. You automatically see things if you're in a team. So all I would say there is just go through your sales representatives to us. They will speak to myself or my colleagues, and then we can set up those teams for you if that's how you wish to work. But by default, you'll only be able to see your own projects. That's the default view. I go back into just mine. And then from in here, again, if I go back to the hamburger menu on the right-hand side, if I highlight something, it's in here that I can then delete a project. I can open the project. I can also choose to copy or clone the project. If I'm doing a version or a different revision of a project, I can take something that already exists, copy it, and then modify that revision. So this basically hamburger menu here allows you to manipulate and change different options relating to the projects that you've currently saved. Now, if I just close that, I go back into this view. This hamburger menu does similar things. So you can see here we've also got share, but also in here, this is now an open project in this hamburger menu. You can see you can also copy. So what I can do, if I just show you in this view, it's a bit easier to see. If I highlight different fans, say for example, I highlight this fan and that fan, so I've got two fans that are highlighted, then I can copy those. I could paste them into a different project. So if you're dealing with larger projects where you have different variants and different versions and different options that are being presented, you don't have to go back and reselect everything every time. What you can do is take some existing selections, copy them, and then paste them into another project. And that works very simply by using this highlight option, which is the control button on the keyboard. Go to the hamburger menu, you can copy from a project, you can open up another project, and then going back to the hamburger menu, you can then paste. It will then paste these two line items into that new location. It's quite a nice way of working between multiple projects. What you can't do on here at the moment is open two projects at the same time. You can only have one active project. So to copy things, you'd open one, copy it, close it, open another one, paste it. We will look at later on the ability to open multiple projects, but at the moment it's a single project interface. Okay, so I'm just going to minimize everything. I'm now going to go back to my select product screen. I just want to look at just very quickly a couple of other product types that we have. So let's have a look at car park fans a minute. So car park fans, we've got 4 types in our portfolio. Again, same as actual fans, it highlights one by default. In this case, it's slimline. And we've also got this blue option. Now, in this example, I'm going to use the blue option. So I'm going to press the blue, select all. And the interface is completely different. But if you look at it closely, it's not. It's got some different layout, but the concept is the same. You still have on the left-hand side a duty. Now, in this case, this is thrust because it's a car park fan. You have some options. In this case here, we're showing the products here by default in this view rather than in a separate page. You can also see in the middle of the page here, we've got some other options to define the physical characteristics of this particular product. And underneath, you can see the results grid. So this basically is a screen that's combining the results grid and the options in one page. Because there's not many fans, it makes more sense to do that. There's no point having a separate results grid if you've only got like 2 or 3 product lines, because you're never going to have that many fans come back when you make a selection. But the way this program works, and this is a good interface to show it, it sits on a configurator. So it tries to remove options that are not available for what you're asking for. So you can see here for this car park fan, we have on the left-hand side here a guard. And on the right-hand side here, we have a deflector. Now, I know that for my particular application, I want a deflector on both ends. But you can see it's grayed out. It's not there. But there is a button there, though. So I know that I want this. So I'm going to press it. And I'm going to say, I want to apply this because that's what I want. So the program says, oh, okay, fair enough. So you want a deflector. So there you are. You've got your deflector. But it's turned off now for me unidirectional. That was the default before, because this combination is only suitable for reversible operation, because the deflector works in both ways. So the program basically removes options that are not compatible with what you've chosen. And this is a good example of what it does. It's chosen for me a different configuration because of this item that I wanted. So if I then go through and make a selection, let's go here, 355. I'm going to look at all the 355 car park fans. I don't know the thrust. It's not in my knowledge set. So I'm going to look at all the 355 car park fans. I press select. It shows me 3 because they're the 3 diameters that we have for these 3 products here. And like an actual fan, if I choose one, say for example here, I can now see I've got the options at the top. I can look at the summary page. And then here again, you can see the calculation data, dimensional data. In this case, I've got a throw chart now, not a performance chart, and then acoustic data and the commercial data relating to the fan and its price. I go back to the results grid. If I want to add that to a project, again, I didn't bother to label this one, it's currently blank. But if I look at my project to extend it out, if I wanted this fan here, I can add it, and then it appears at the bottom. Again, I can label it afterwards if I wanted to. I didn't actually label it when I made the selection. Car Park 3. Update it, so now it's Car Park 3. And this is really how the program works. We're going to look at some other options. It's basically giving you an interface. We've got box fans, we've got 5 in here, selection. It's saying leave, by the way, because I haven't saved my project. So it's a bit of a warning to say that if I left my web page, I'm going to lose what I've saved. Now, I'm not going to leave the web page, so I'm safe, but that's what the prompt is for. So it just warns you that I haven't actually physically saved my project because I added this car park fan and didn't actually save it. But if you look at box fans, same really as actual fans. Again, you have the duty panel, you have different options, you have some different visual options. So this is the way the program is laid out. It's trying to give you a visual cue of what options you can pick for the different product types and the different product families. And depending on the product type, you'll see different images and different categorizations. So again, if I go back up to here and have a look at something on the left-hand side, so these are all product families. Let's have a look at some applications. If we looked at, say, for example, tunnels and metros. Same concept as before, but here you can't see, there's no blue button. There's no select all option on this side. There is on this side, but not on this side. And that's because these products are a group of different types. And as you saw there when I showed you a car park fan and a box fan, the interface is different. So if you've got different product types in a group, like an application, you haven't got one interface that suits all of them. So that's why on here, on the left-hand side, under these applications and functions, you've only got these orange buttons against these product cards. So if I look at a jet fan, for example, these are tunnel fans. You'll see the screen again will change. A bit similar to a car park fan in the fact that you have silencers involved with a fan in the middle. And if I chose, for example, a different silencer, you can see a visualization of what we're going to get. These are based on thrust. So if I type in, I don't know, something like 700 newtons. It's similar to an actual fan. You have results. Again, these are in the same screen as the options because not that many fans. Again, if I picked one of these, just take the top one. I've got the options again. I can look at the summary page. Again, calculation data, key dimensions. These are inquired because they're a design product. We don't know necessarily what the design is, so this is why they're off. The dimensions that we do know are there. And then the graph here is more of a pitch angle graph, but it's a performance chart for this particular style of product. And again, all the other tabs operate exactly the same way. And again, from here, if I go back to my results grid, I can then add to project. And again, if I go back to my project, I've now got a thrust tunnel fan added. So this project, as I say, is just it's like how the old program works. It just sits there in the background, or in this case on the side here, and basically receives every fan that you've added. And as you've seen, you can modify and move, change and delete items once they've been added. And if you press the save option, that will then commit that back to the server and it will be saved safely. So if you navigate away from this website, you won't lose any of your work. Okay, so I'm just going to go back now to the home page. So there's two areas as we're coming to the end now of this webinar of areas that I've not shown you. I've not shown you at all direct mode. I've not shown any of the properties and settings that you can change on your user account to change how the program behaves. So let's look at direct mode first. So I'm going to go into direct mode here using this top menu. I could do so in here. I could go into this configure. It's the same thing. Actually, let's do that. Let's go in this way. Let's just go in using this orange button down here. So I'm going to go into direct mode and I'm going to look at configuring a JMV axial fan. Again, this works the same way as the old program. You have here a series of physical characteristics and properties to change the fan type we're looking at. Default is the smallest fan. This is a little 315. On the right hand side here, we have a list of all the motors that can fit inside that fan. The default motor combination is a part numbered item, which is why it's gone down the middle here. So this grey bar here is the motor that's currently been chosen. And you can see on the chart here the angles that represent pitch angles that this particular motor can be used against. If I chose a smaller motor, and let's put a duty point on here first. So if I click the chart, I can put a duty point on. So that's my operating point. Again, I could have plotted it just by putting the values at the top here. So the chart is interactive. If I chose a smaller motor, say this one here, for example, you can see here this line has changed because this motor isn't as powerful as the one we had earlier on. So it can't drive all the angles that we had before. So that's been removed. And it works in a very similar way to the old program. The more you choose here, the different fan characteristics you get. You have a choice of motors. All the options you see for the selected data, the summary page, the charts, anything else, operate exactly the same as you saw when we put a duty and value in on the aerodynamic selection. So these are identical. The only difference here is you're configuring the product based on property, and you have to know what the product is by product line and also product family. So you have to know basically your products to use this properly to understand the selections you're actually making. Also in here, you can search, if I just minimize that to make it a bit clearer, you can also search for part numbers. So if you're working with catalog products, we have some areas where we have distribution type products. You can type that product number in here, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, and then search for that. And then that will then basically find that product, and that will then show that in here as a selected product with all the different values filled in for you. So it's a quick way of basically not having to go through, choose the size, choose the hub, choose the blades. The part number search finds all those properties for you based on the details of that particular part number. Options again down the left hand side work the same way as selection mode. You can add accessories, you can change different installation type options, add speed control, etc., etc. Some of the more common ones are basically drawn up here. So you can see here with some electrical data, which is also in here. We've just basically presented it on the screen at the same time, so you haven't got to go into all these sub menus to choose some of the more commonly chosen properties. Again, to add it to direct mode, add it to a project, sorry, you can basically then go add to project, and it adds then this particular fan to the project. Again, I didn't label it again here, which I could have done. But again, I'm hoping you can see the process and operation is quite straightforward. You basically interact with options, you choose something, you choose a motor, then you can add it. Let's go back to the home page very quickly. Again, leave because I didn't actually save it when I added this 315. It's still there. If I navigated completely to a different website, then it would go. But while I'm still working with the program, it's still there. So I would personally recommend that when you add things, probably save it, just so it doesn't come up with that prompt every time. So I want to end very lastly with just an overview of some of the settings you can change on your account. This is an account privilege to do some of this. So I'm going to go into my account, and on the top right hand side of the screen here, you can see me. Now I'm logged in, I can see my details here. And if I look at my details, I can do two things. I can change my personal details, and my name, my address, that sort of thing. Or I can change the program settings. And if I look at program settings, it's in here that we can define certain default values. So for example, if I want to do a printout, I can say I don't want the performance chart, or I don't want dimensions. And I don't want to show prices on my printout if I'm doing a technical schedule, for example. So this can all be defaulted on your account. You can also default different units. So if you're a meters cubed per hour person, or liters per second, or any other unit, you can change this as a default. In the same way that if you're a 60 Hertz country, you can also change that as a default. And it's in here if you wanted, for example, to change your sound distance, which is something that came out on some of the earlier presentations. You can change that to 1 meter, for example. So all your selections will do all your sound data at 1 as a default. So this is basically properties to define how the program operates. And at the top here, this is the results grid. So when you saw the selections being made with all the yellow highlighted values, that grid you can change. If I go to edit the grid, it works in a similar way to the export facility I showed you. You can remove columns you don't want. So for example, I don't want full load starting current. I can get rid of them just by dragging it at the top here. And I want, for example, the speed for some reason at the beginning. I don't know why, but I've just chose that. So if that's the order of columns that I want, so it just reads through left to right, row by row. If I then press done and press save, the next time I come to use the program, I won't see full load starting current, they've gone, and I'll see speed at the beginning. Now I'm not going to change my account because that's a silly order that I've done there, but I'm hoping you can see the principle. You can basically remove what you don't want and then choose the order by dragging the columns that you want in a particular sequence. You have to press done, then you have to press save to commit those changes. Now I'm not going to change anything I've done here because it's going to make a mess of things. But that's how you can just tailor and influence how the program will change. We will be adding more things in there later on. For example, you saw in there, for example, there's no chart options at the moment, which we'll be adding. So anything the way the program operates, we'll be basically adding to that area so you can define whether something's turned on or off or is displayed in a certain way as a default. So in terms of what we were going to try and show you, that was basically it. We went through a quick run through there of making a simple selection. We looked at the program interacting with the projects. You can see how the projects are saved. And just a very quick look at the end then for direct mode and some of the account settings that you can change on your user account. So for me, that's as much as I was going to show.